Here's a story from Grandpa for my three favorite little girls, Emma, Ayla, and Audrey. Today we're going to read something from Dr. Seuss. In fact, this is one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books. I love to read Dr. Seuss books out loud because the words are just so much fun to have in my mouth. As you learn to read, I highly recommend finding some Dr. Seuss books and reading them out loud just to make your mouth happy. So here's the story. Did I ever tell you how lucky you are? By Dr. Seuss. When I was quite young and quite small for my size, I met an old man in the Desert of Dries, and he sang me a song I will never forget. At least, well, I haven't forgotten it yet. He sat in a terribly prickly place, but he sang with a sunny, sweet smile on his face. When you think things are bad, when you feel sour and blue, when you start to get mad, you should do what I do. Just tell yourself, Ducky, you're really quite lucky. Some people are much more, oh, ever so much more, oh, muchly much more unlucky than you. Be glad you don't work on the Bunglebum Bridge that they're building across Boober Bay at Bum Ridge. It's a troublesome world. All the people who are in it are troubled with troubles almost every minute. You ought to be thankful, a whole heaping lot, for the places and people you're lucky you're not. Just suppose, for example, you lived in Gazate and got caught in that traffic on Zate Highway 8. Or suppose, just for instance, you lived in Gazare with your bedroom up here. See the light in the window in the far upper left corner? And your bathroom up there. See the light in the little window in the upper right corner? Boy, that would be a long way to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night. Suppose, just suppose, you were poor Herbie Hart, who has taken his thromdimbulator apart. He never will get it together, I'm sure. He never will know if the gick or the gore fits into the skucks or the snucks or the snore. Yes, Ducky, you're lucky you're not Herbie Hart, who has taken his thromdimbulator apart. Think they work you too hard? Think of poor Allie Sard. He has to mow grass in his uncle's backyard, and it's quick-growing grass, and it grows as he mows it. The faster he mows it, the faster he grows it. And all that his stingy old uncle will pay for his shoving that mower around in that hay is the piffless pay of 2 ducats a day. And Allie can't live on such piffless pay. So he has to paint flagpoles on Sundays and grooves. How lucky you are you don't live in his shoes. And poor Mr. Bix, every morning at 6, poor Mr. Bix has his Borfin to fix. It doesn't seem fair, it just doesn't seem right, but his Borfin just seems to go schlump every night. It schlumps in a heap, sadly needing repair. Bix figures it's due to the local night air. It takes him all day to unschlump it, and then the night air comes back and it schlumps once again. So don't you feel blue, don't get down in the dumps. You're lucky you don't have a Borfin that schlumps. And while we are at it, consider the Schlotz, the crumple-horn, web-footed, green-bearded Schlotz, whose tail is entailed with unsolvable knots. If he isn't much worse off than you, I'll eat my umbrella. That's just what I'll do. And you're lucky indeed you don't ride on a camel. To ride on a camel, you sit on a whammel. A whammel, you know, is a sort of a saddle held on by a button that's known as a faddle. And boy, if your old whammel faddle gets loose, I'm telling you, Ducky, you're gone like a goose. And poor Mr. Potter, T-crosser, I-dotter, he has to cross T's and he has to dot I's in an I&T factory out in Van Nuys. Oh, the jobs people work at. Out west near Hotch Hotch, there's a Hotch Hotcher bee watcher. His job is to keep both his eyes on the lazy town bee. A bee that is watched will work harder, you see. Well, he watched and he watched, but in spite of his watch, that bee didn't work any harder, not much. So then somebody said our old bee-watching man just isn't bee-watching as hard as he can. He ought to be watched by another Hotch-Hotcher. The thing that we need is a bee watcher watcher. Well, the bee watcher watched the bee watcher. He didn't watch well, so another Hotch-Hotcher had to come in as a watch watcher watcher. And today all the Hotchers who live in Hotch-Hotch are watching on watch watcher watching watching the watcher who's watching that bee. You're not a Hotch watcher. You're lucky, you see. And how fortunate you're not Professor DeBreeze, who has spent the past 32 years, if you please, trying to teach Irish ducks how to read Javanese. And think of the poor puffing Pugelhorn players who have to parade down the Pugelhorn stairs every morning to wake up the Prince of Puboken. It's awful how often their pugels get broken. And oh, just suppose you were poor Harry Hatto. Try as he will, he can't make any shadow. He thinks that, perhaps, something's wrong with his giz, and I think that, by golly, there probably is. And the brothers Bazoo, the poor brothers Bazoo, suppose your hair grew like theirs happened to do. You think you're unlucky? I'm telling you, ducky, some people are muchly, oh, ever so muchly more unlucky than you. And suppose that you lived in that forest in France where the average young person just hasn't a chance to escape from the perilous pants-eating plants. But your pants are safe. You're a fortunate guy, and you ought to be shouting, "How lucky am I?" And speaking of plants, you should be greatly gladdish you're not Farmer Falkenberg's 17th radish. Can you see the 17th radish where that little worm is about to take a bite out of it? And you're so lucky you're not Gucky Gown, who lives by himself 90 miles out of town in the ruins of Ronk. Ronk is rather run down. And you're so lucky you're not a left sock left behind by mistake in the caverns of Croc. Thank goodness for all of the things you are not. Thank goodness you're not something someone forgot and left all alone in some punkerish place like a rusty tin coat hanger hanging in space. That's why I say, ducky, don't grumble, don't stew. Some critters are much, oh, ever so much, so muchly much more unlucky than you. And that's the end of the story. Sometimes when you're sad or unhappy, you can only think about the things that are making you sad or unhappy. But I found that if I change my thoughts to think about things I'm grateful for or that make me happy, all of a sudden I'm feeling much better. For me, I like to think about Dickens nuzzling my hand when he wants me to pet him, or the time I saw Dory dancing with a butterfly in my backyard. Or even better, any of the many silly things the three of you have done when we've played together. I know how lucky I am because I've got Emma, Ayla, and Audrey for granddaughters, which makes me very lucky indeed. Always remember that Grandpa loves you, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.